Well, hello, everyone, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And unexpected is anything that has nothing to do with inclusion or diversity, as I've said many times. Today, our guest is someone I got to meet last year, and we'll talk about that. His name is Alex Fullick. And Alex and I met because we both attended a conference in London in October about business continuity. And I'm going to let Alex define that and describe what that is all about. But Alex introduced me at the conference. And among other things, I convinced him that he had to come on Unstoppable Mindset. And so we get to do that today. He says he's nervous. So, all I got to say is just keep staring at your screens and your speakers and just keep him nervous. Keep him on edge. Alex, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're here.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm glad to be here today. And yeah, a little nervous because usually it's me on the other side of the microphone interviewing people, so I don't need to sit in this chair too often.
I've been there and done that, as I recall.
Yes, yes, you were a guest of mine. I guess when did we do that show? A month and a half, 2 months ago, or something?
At least.
I forget. Yeah.
And I said the only charge for me coming on your podcast was you had to come on this one. So there you go.
Yes, and here I am.
Yeah. And several people ask me, is there a charge for coming on your podcast? And I have just never done that. I've never felt that I should charge somebody to come on the podcast, other than we do have the one rule, which is you got to have fun. If you can't have fun, then there's no sense being on the podcast. So, that works out. Well, tell us about the early Alex growing up and, all that sort of stuff so that people get to know you a little bit.
Oh, the early Alex. Oh,
sure, the early Alex.
Okay. Well, a lot of people don't know I was actually born in England myself, Farnham, Surrey, southwest of London. So until I was about 8, and then we came to Canada, grew up in Thunder Bay, northwestern Ontario, and then moved to the greater Toronto area, and I've lived all around here. North of the city, right downtown in the city, and now I live an hour west of it in a city called Guelph. So that's how I got here. Younger me was, I don't know, typical, I guess. Nothing special.
Went to school, went to high school, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no brainiac. I was working. My first job was in hospitality, and I thought that's where I was going to be for a long time because I worked my way up to. I did all the positions: kitchen manager, assistant manager, cooks, bartender, server. Did everything in there. Was even a company trainer at one point for a restaurant chain, and then did some general managing. But I got to a point where computers were going to start coming in to the industry, and I thought, well, I guess I should learn how to use these things, shouldn't I? And I went to school, learned how to use them, basic using. I'm not talking about building computers and networks and things like that, just the user side of things. And I did that for 6 months, and then I thought I was going back into the industry. And no, fate had something different for me.
What happened?
Well, my best friend, who is still my best friend 30 years later, he was working for a large financial institution, and he said, hey, we need some help on this big program to build some call trees. When you're finished, he goes, get your foot in the door, and you could find something else within the bank. So I went, okay, fine. Well, they called the position business recovery planner, and I knew absolutely nothing about business recovery or business continuity, not a single thing. I'd never even heard the term.
Yeah.
And but for some reason, I just took to it. I don't know what it was at the time, but I just went, this is kind of neat. And I think it was the fact that I was learning something different. I wasn't memorizing a recipe for Alfredo sauce or something like that. It was completely different. And I was meeting and working with people at every level, sitting in meetings with senior vice presidents and CEOs and giving them updates, and, a data analyst, data entry clerk, and just talking. And I went, this is so much fun. And I've been doing that now for over 28 years.
Well, I had not really heard much of the term business continuity, although I understand emergency preparedness and such things because I did that, of course, going into the World Trade Center. And I did it for, well, partly to be prepared for an emergency, but also partly because I was a leader of an office and I felt that I needed to know what to do if there were ever an emergency and how to behave because I couldn't necessarily rely on other people. And also, in reality, I might even be the only person in the office. So it
Mm,
was a survival issue to a degree, but I learned what to do. And of course, we know the history of September 11th and me and all that. But the reality is that what I realized many years later was that the knowledge that I learned and gained that helped me on September 11th really created a mindset that allowed me to be able to function and not be, as I put it to people, blinded or paralyzed by fear. The
yes.
fear was there. I would be dumb to say I wasn't concerned, but the fear helped me focus as opposed to being something that overwhelmed and completely blocked me from being capable and being able to function. So
Yeah.
I, I know what you're saying. Well, what exactly is business continuity?
There are people who are going to watch this and listen, and they're going to want me to give a really perfect definition. But depending on the organization, depending on leadership, depending on the guiding industry organization out there, Business Continuity Institute, Disaster Recovery Institute, ISO, NIST, and so many other groups out there, I'm not going to quote any of them as a definition because if I if I say
Yeah,
one, the others are going to be mad
gonna
at me.
yell at you.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, or if I quote it wrong, they'll get mad at me. So I'm going to explain it the way I usually do it to people when I'm talking in the dog park. When they ask what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say business continuity management is how do you keep your business going? What do you need? Who do you need? The resources when you've been hit by an event and with the least impact to your customers and your delivery of services.
Yeah.
And it's simple. They all get it. They all understand it. So if anyone doesn't like that, please feel free. Send me an email. I can hit the delete key just as fast as you can write it. So, but that's what a lot of people understand. And that's really what business continuity management is. Right from the
I
very beginning, when you identify something, all the way to, wow, we made it through. We're done. The incident's over.
One
You
of the
know,
people that you and I both worked with at the Business Continuity International Hybrid Convention in October was Sergio Garcia, who kind of coordinated things. And I think it was he who I asked, what what is it that you do? What's the purpose of all of the people getting together and having this conference? And he said, I think it was he who said it, not you, that the best way to think about it is that the people who go to this conference are the what if people. They're the ones who have to think about having an event and what happens if there's an event and how do you deal with it. But so they're the what if people. They're the people that nobody ever pays any attention to until such time as there is something that happens, and then they're in high demand.
yeah, that's especially that being ignored part until something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the nice thing, one of the things I love about this position, and I've been doing it, like I said, for 28 years, written books, podcasts, you've been on my show, YouTube channel, et cetera, uh, is that I do get to learn and from so many people
Mhm.
and show the value of what we do. And I'm in a position to reach out and talk to so many different people. Like I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, CEOs, I can sit in front of the CEO and tell them, you're not ready. If something
Yeah.
happens, you're not ready because you haven't attended any training or your team hasn't attended training or nobody's contributing to the crisis management or the business continuity or whatever you want to talk about. And I find that empowering and it's amazing to sit there and not tell a CEO to their face, you're screwed. Not, you don't say those kind of things,
No.
but being able to sit there and just have a moment with them to say that, however you term it, you might have a good relationship with them where you can say that for all I know, but being able to sit in front of a CEO or a vice president and say, hey, this is where things are. This is where I need your help. I don't think a lot of people get that luxury
Mhm.
to be able to do it. And I'm lucky enough that I've and worked with a lot of clients where I can. I
Yeah.
can. This is where I need your help. What's your expectation? Let's make it happen. And having that behind you is it's kind of empowering.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I have start talking a little bit about with people when we talk about emergency preparedness is if you're really going to talk about being prepared for an emergency, one of the things that you need to do is recognize that probably the biggest part of emergency preparedness or business continuity, however you want to term it, isn't physical. It's the mental preparation that you need to make that people generally don't make. I've been watching for the last now 5 or 6 weeks all the fires and things down here in California, which have been so horrible. And people talk about being prepared physically. You should have a go bag so that you can grab it and go. You should do this, you should do that. But the problem is, nobody ever talks about or helps people really deal with the mental preparation for something unexpected.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna put it that way as opposed to saying something negative because it could be a positive thing. But the bottom line is we don't really learn to prepare ourselves for unexpected things that happen in our lives and how to react to them. And so, especially when it's a negative thing, the fear just completely overwhelms us.
Yeah, I agree with you. Fear can be, what's that? Fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't know how to respond when an event happens. And I think I'm going to take a step back, and I think that goes back to when we're young as well, because we have our parents, our grandparents, our teachers, our principals. You can go achieve your goals. Like everything is positive. You can go
yeah,
do that. You go do that. They don't teach you that, yeah, to achieve those goals, you're going to hit some roadblocks. And you need to understand how to deal with that when things occur. And you use your example with the fires in California. If you don't know how to prepare for some of those small things, then when a big fire like that occurs, you're even less prepared. You
right,
have no idea how to deal with that, and it's a really change in mindset and understanding that not everything is rosy.
right.
you know, and unfortunately, a lot of people get told, oh, or they get told, oh, don't worry about it, it'll never happen. So great when it does happen. What
Then
good was that advice?
then we're yeah. I remember after September 11th, a couple of months after, I called somebody who had expressed an interest in purchasing some tape backup products from us at Quantum. And I hadn't heard from them. And so I reached out and I said, so what's going on? How would you guys like to proceed? And this was an IT guy. And he said, oh, well, the president of the company said September 11th happened. And so since it did, we're not going to have to worry about that anymore. So we're not going to go forward with doing anything to back up our data. And I'm sitting there going, you missed the whole point of what backup is all about. I didn't dare say that to him, but it isn't just about an emergency, but it's also about what if you accidentally delete a file? Do you have a way to go back and get it? I mean, there's so many other parts
Yeah,
to it. But this guy's boss just basically said, well, it happened, so it's not going to happen now. We don't have to worry about it.
yeah. Like you hear on the news, well, it feels like daily. Oh, once in 100-year storm, once in a hundred
Yeah,
year event, once in 100-year this. Well, take a look at the news. It's happening weekly,
yeah,
daily.
yeah.
Forget
We're,
the one in 100 years thing.
Yeah, nowadays, absolutely. There's so many things that are happening. California is going through a couple of major atmospheric rivers right now, as they're now calling it. And so Southern California is getting a lot of rain because of one of the rivers. And of course, it has all the burn areas from the fires. And so I don't know what we'll see in the way of mudslides, but the rain is picking up. Even here where I live, we're going to get an inch or more of rain And usually we don't get the rain that a lot of other places get. The clouds have to go over a lot of mountains to get to us, and they lose their moisture before they do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we just had a whole pile of snow here. So we had a snowstorm yesterday. So we've got about 20 centimeters of snow out there that hasn't been plowed yet. So bit of a mess.
There you go. Well, you know, you can go out and play in the snow.
Well, the dog loves it, that's for
Yeah,
sure. I
of
don't
course.
like shoveling it, but
Yeah. I don't think my cat would like it, but the animal would like it. He'd go out and play in it if it were here. We don't get much snow here, but yeah, he'd play in
yeah,
it. But it is so interesting to really talk about this whole issue of business continuity, emergency preparedness, whatever you want to consider it, because it's more than anything, it's a mindset, and it is something that people should learn to do in their lives in general, because it would help people be a lot more prepared if people really created a mindset in themselves about dealing with unexpected things. Probably they'd be a little bit more prepared physically for an emergency, but they would certainly be in a lot better shape to deal with something as like the fires are approaching. But they
yeah.
don't. But we don't do that. We don't teach that.
No, it's interesting too that a lot of those people, they'll work on projects in their organization, and they will look at things. Well, what can go wrong? And try to mitigate it and fix, whatever issues are in the way or remove roadblocks. They're actually doing that as part of their project. But when it comes to themselves and they have to think about, fires or something like that, that won't happen. And just, wait a minute, how come you've got the right mindset when it comes to your projects at work, but you don't have that same mindset when it comes to your own well-being or your families or whatever the case may be? How come it's different? You go from one side to the other, and I've noticed that a few times with people, and like, I don't get it. Why are you so? You have the right mindset under one circumstance, and the other circumstance you completely ignore it and don't have the mindset.
Yeah. Which makes you wonder, how much of a mindset do you really have when it comes to work in all aspects of it?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I remember after September 11th, people constantly asked me is, who helped you down the stairs, or was there somebody who was responsible for coming to get you to take you downstairs? And the reality is, as I said, I was the leader. I was helping other people go downstairs. But by the same token, I'm of the opinion that in buildings like the World Trade Center towers, there's people talk about the buddy system. So if somebody is
Mm.
in the building, you should have a buddy, and it doesn't even need to be necessarily in the same office, but there should be an arrangement so that there is somebody looking out for each other person. So everybody should have a buddy. I'm of the opinion it isn't a buddy. There should be two buddies, and at least one of them has to be outside of the office, so that you have three people who have to communicate and develop those lines of communications and work through it. And by that way, you have a better chance of making sure that more people get whatever communications are necessary.
Yeah. You create your like a support network.
Absolutely. And I think at least a triumvirate makes a lot more sense than just a buddy.
Yeah. You might be freaked out, nervous, shaking, but with a couple of people standing there, talking to you, you're going to come right back, hopefully, with that calmer, stop shaking when a couple of people are there.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you have the same one person doing it, usually, oh, you're just saying that because you have to. But when
Yeah.
you've got two people doing it, it's like, okay, thanks team. Like you're really helping. That
Yeah.
this is much better.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense, and especially if one of them isn't necessarily a person who's normally in your work pattern, that brings somebody in from somewhat the outside who approaches things differently because they don't necessarily know you or as well or in the same way as your buddy who's maybe next door to you in the office right across the hall or next door or whatever.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree
And I
completely.
think it makes sense. Well, the conference that we were at a lot to well to a large degree, and at least for my presentation, was all about resilience. What is resilience to you?
Oh God,
How's that for a general question?
that that has become such a buzzword.
I know it really is, and it's unfortunate because when we start hearing, resilience, or I hear all the time, amazing, and so many times we get all these buzzwords, and they really lose a lot of their value when that happens. But still, it's a
Yeah,
fair question.
I I do think the word resilience is overused and
Yeah,
it's losing its meaning, dictionary meaning, uh, because it's just used for everything these days.
yeah.
You my neighbor left her keys, sorry, her daughter took her house keys this morning by accident. She couldn't get into her house. When she got them back, and she had a comment where she said, oh, well, I'm resilient. But really? You just went and got some keys. How was that
Yeah,
resilient? So,
yeah,
I'm starting to get to the point now when people ask me, what's resilience to you? What's it mean to you? I start to say now, does it matter?
yeah,
My definition is fine for me. If you have a definition of it for yourself that you understand, you know what it means, or your organization has a definition, we'll take it and run.
yeah,
You know what it means. You're all behind that meaning. We don't need a vendor or some other guiding industry organization to say this must be your definition of resilience. It's like, well, no, you're just wordsmithing and making it sound fancy. You do, it means what it means to you. How do you define it? If that's how you define it, that's what it means, and that's all that matters. My definition doesn't matter. Nobody else's definition matters. Because and it's become that way because the
yeah,
term is used, for everything these days.
yeah. I think that there is a lot of value in if a person is, if we use the dictionary definition, resilient. They well, again, from my definition, it gets back to the mindset you establish. You establish a mindset where you can be flexible, where you can adapt, and where you can sometimes think outside the box that you would normally think out of, but you don't panic to do that. You've learned how to address different things and be able to focus to develop what you need to do to accomplish whatever you need to accomplish at any unexpected time.
Yeah, and you're calm, level-headed. You've got that right mindset. You don't freak out over the small things. You see the bigger picture. You understand it. I'm here. That's where I need to go, and that's where you focus, and you don't sweat all those little things. And I think it's kind of reminds me that the definitions that are being thrown out there now reminds me of some of those mission and vision statements that leadership comes up with in their organizations with all this. Oh, that you read the sentence and it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like what?
What's the wackiest definition of resilience that you can think of that you've heard,
I don't know if there's a wacky one. I
or
know
an
I've heard
unusual one?
um, oh, geez. I know I've heard definitions of bounce forward, bounce back, agility, adaptability.
Well, your
I
car keys lady this morning, your
what's
house
that?
key, your house key lady this morning, the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Resilient just because she got her keys back. Yeah, really.
yeah, well,
Where's
that's kind of a wacky example
yeah,
of one, but I don't think I've heard any weird definitions yet. I'm sure there's probably some out
it's
there.
coming. It's
We'll get to the point where, like, how the heck are you defining resilience with that?
yeah,
And if you're looking at it from that way, then yeah, my neighbor with the keys, that would fit in right there. It's like, that's not resilient. You just went and picked up some keys.
yeah. Where's the resilience?
Like, how did you adapt?
The
You
resilience
on, you
might
did
be if you
everything.
didn't. The resilience might be if you didn't panic. Although I'm sure that didn't happen, but um, that would that would lean toward the concept of resilience if you didn't panic and you just went, well, I'll go get them. Everything will be fine. But that's not what people do.
Yeah, well, that is what she did actually. She just as I was shoveling snow this morning, she goes, "Oh well, I'll just go get them." Like, okay, but
Yeah.
does that really mean resilience, or does that just mean you went to pick up the keys that your daughter accidentally took?
And you
You
stayed
know,
reasonably level-headed about it.
so I don't know
Yeah.
if I would count that as a definition of resilience, but or even an
I agree.
example of resilience. It's
Yeah.
more of okay, you know,
Yeah.
if if it's something like that, then that must mean I'm resilient when I forget to pull the laundry out after the buzzer. Oh yeah, I got to pull the laundry out. Does that make me resilient?
Yeah,
Because I
absolutely. Once you pulled it out, you were resilient. Not
you know,
until then.
so you know, so I guess it's how people, but then it comes down to how people want to define it too.
Yeah.
If they're happy with that definition, well, if it makes you happy, I'm not going to tell you to change it.
Yeah, but I think ultimately there are some basic standards that get back to what we talked about earlier, which is establishing a mindset
Yeah,
and being able to deal with things that come out of the ordinary. Well, and you're in an industry that by and large is probably viewed as pretty negative. You're always anticipating the emergencies and all the unexpected horrible things that can happen. The what if people again, but that's got to be from a mindset standpoint a little bit tough to deal with. That you're always dealing with this negative industry. How do you do that? You're resilient, I know, but anyway.
yeah. Really, I just look at it from a risk perspective. Oh, could that happen to us? No, it wouldn't. We're we're in the middle of a Canadian Shield, or at least where I am. We're in the middle of Canadian Shield. There's not going to be two plates rubbing up against each other and having an earthquake. So I just look at it from risk. Where we are, snowstorms. Yep, that could hit us and has. What do we do? Okay, well, we close our facility. We have everyone work from home, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't look at it from the perspective of doom and gloom. I look at it more of opportunity to make us better at what we do and how we prepare and how we respond and how we overcome, situations that happen out there. And I don't look at it from oh, here comes, the disaster guy,
Yeah,
always pointing out everything that's wrong.
yeah,
And, I'd rather point out opportunities that we have to become as a team, organization, or a person stronger.
yeah. Because it's not necessarily a disaster, and as I said earlier, it could very well be that some unexpected thing will happen that could be a very positive thing. But again, if we don't have the mindset to deal with that, then we don't. And the reality is, the more that we work to develop a mindset to deal with unexpected things, the more quickly we can make a correct analysis of whatever is going on and move forward from it, as opposed to letting fear again overwhelm us. We can, if we practice creating this mindset that says we really understand how to deal with unexpected situations, then we are in a position to be able to, the more we practice it, deal with it and move forward in a positive way. So it doesn't need to be a disaster. September 11th was a disaster by any standard. But as I tell people, while I am still convinced that no matter what anyone might think, we couldn't figure out that September 11th was going to happen. I'm not convinced that even if all the agencies communicated, they would have gotten it because, and I talk about trust and teamwork a lot, as I point out, a team of 19 people kept their mouths shut, or a few more who were helping in the planning of it, and they pulled off something that basically brought the world to its knees. So I'm not convinced that we could have stopped September 11th from happening. At least I haven't heard something that convinces me of that yet. But what each of us has the ability to do is to determine how we deal with September 11th.
Mm,
So we couldn't prevent it, but we can certainly all deal with or address the issue of how do we deal with it going forward.
yeah, I agree. I was actually in a conversation with my niece a couple of months ago. We were up at the cottage and she was talking about school and some of the people that she goes to school with. And I said, well, you're never going to be able to change other people, what they think or what they do. I said, what you can control is your response.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're always picking on you, the reason they're picking on you is because they know they can get a rise out of you.
Mm-hmm.
They know whatever they're saying or doing is getting to you, so they're going to keep doing it because it's empowering for them. But you can take away that empowerment if you make the right choices and how you respond. If you just shrug and walk away, I'm simplifying it, of course.
Yeah.
If you just shrug and walk away, well, after a while, they're going to realize nothing I'm saying is getting through, and they'll move away from you.
Yeah.
They won't bug you anymore because they can't get a rise out
They
of you.
can't get a rise out of you.
And so the only thing you can control is how you respond. You know, and
Right.
as you keep saying, it's the mindset. Change your mindset from response to, I'm prepared for what this person's going to say, and I'm not going to let it bother me.
Yeah. Well, bullying is really all about that.
Yeah.
People can't bully if you don't let yourself be bullied.
Yep.
And whether it's social media and so many other things, you can't be bullied if you don't allow it and if you ignore it or move on, or get help to deal with the issue if it gets serious enough. But
Yeah.
you don't need to approach it from a shame or fear standpoint,
Yeah.
or you shouldn't anyway. But that's unfortunately, again, all too often what happens, and we see a lot of teenage suicides and so on because people are letting the bullies get a rise out of them, and the bullies win.
Yep. Yeah. And as I told her, I said, and you just mentioned it too, if it gets out of hand or becomes physical, I said, then you have to take action. I don't mean turning around and swinging back. I said,
No.
step up, go get someone who has authority and can do something about it.
Yeah.
Don't run away. Just deal with it differently. And don't start the fight, because then you're just confirming that I'm the bully. I can do this again.
Yeah.
You're giving them license to do what they want.
Yeah.
But stand up to them, or depending on the situation, tell someone higher up in authority that can do something and make a change. But you have to be calm when you do it.
I remember when I was at UC Irvine, when I was going to college, I had my first guide dog, Squire. He was a golden retriever, 64 pounds, the most gentle, wonderful dog you could ever imagine. And unfortunately, other students on campus would bring their dogs. It was a very big campus, pretty, in a sense, rural. And there were only about 2,700 students, and a bunch of students would bring their dogs to school, and they would just turn the dogs loose, and they'd go off to class, and then they'd find their dogs at the end of the day. Unfortunately, some of the dogs developed into a pack, and one day they decided that they were going to come after my guide dog. I think I've told this story a couple times on this podcast, but what happened was we were walking down a sidewalk, and the dogs were coming up from behind, and they were growling and so on. And Squire, my guide dog, jerked away from me. I still held his leash, but he jerked out of his harness out of my hand and literally jumped up in the air, turned around, and came down on all fours, hunkered down, and growled at these dogs, all in about a 2-second time frame. Totally shocked the dogs. They just slunk away. Somebody was describing it to me later. And the dog was very deliberate about what he did. Of course, after they left, he comes over and he's wagging his tail. Did I do good or what? But he was very deliberate, and it's a lesson to deal with things. And he never attacked any of the dogs, but he wasn't going to let anything happen to him or me. And that's what loyalty is really all about.
Yeah.
But if something had happened and that hadn't worked out the way expected, then I would have had to have gone off and in fact, I did talk to school officials about the fact that these dogs were doing that. And I don't even remember whether anybody did anything, but I know I was also, a day or so later, going into one of the buildings. Before he got inside, there was a guy I knew who was in a wheelchair, and another dog did come up and started to try to attack Squire. This guy with in the wheelchair pulled one of the arms off his chair and just lambasted the dog right across the head, made him
Wow.
back up. Yeah. But it was that people shouldn't be doing what they allowed their dog, they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is it's still a lesson that you don't let yourself be bullied.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no need to do that. But it's a pretty fascinating thing to see and to deal with. But it's all about preparation. And again, if we teach ourselves to think strategically and develop that skill, it becomes just second nature to do it, which is unfortunately what we don't learn.
Yeah, I didn't know that as a kid because when I was a little kid and first came to Canada, especially, I was bullied because, well, I had a funny voice.
You did. You don't have that
I
anymore, by the way.
know if I'm with my mom or relatives, especially when I'm back in England, words will start coming back. And
Yeah.
there are words that I do say different, like garage or garage.
Garage. Yeah.
I hate garage, but
Yeah.
garage.
Garage.
I still say some words like that.
Or process as opposed to process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
there's something like that. But as a kid, I was bullied, and there was no talk of mindset or how to deal with it. It's
No.
either put up with it or, you know, you really couldn't turn to anybody back then because nobody really knew themselves how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Bullies had always been around. They were always in the playground. So the mechanisms to deal with it weren't there either. It wasn't until much later that I'm able to deal with that. If someone said some of the things now, right away, I can turn around because I've trained myself to have a different mindset and say that, no, that's unacceptable. You can't talk to that person or you can't talk to me that way.
Yeah.
If you say it again, I will, call the police or whatever. Never anything where I'm going to punch you in the chin, or something like that. Never. That doesn't solve anything.
No.
But stand up saying, no, I'm not going to accept that. Which is easier now, and maybe that just comes with age or something. I don't know, but back then, no, it was that kind of mechanism to deal with it, or finding that inner strength and mindset to do that wasn't there.
Right. But when you started to work on developing that mindset, the more you worked on it, the easier it became to make it happen.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
so
Yeah,
and so now it's a way of life, and it's something that I think we all really could learn and should learn. And my book, Live Like a Guide Dog, is really all about that, developing that mindset to control fear. And I just think it's so important that we really deal with it. And, in this country right now, we've got a government administration that's all about chaos and fear. And unfortunately, not nearly enough people have learned how to deal with that,
yeah,
which is too bad.
yeah, yeah.
Although, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a shame that a lot of people haven't learned how to deal with that. Uh, Part of it again is we don't teach that as
Mm-mm.
well. So sometimes the only thing some people know is fear and bullying because that's all they've experienced,
Yeah,
either as the bully or being bullied. So they don't see anything different. So when it happens on a scale what we see right now, it's, well, that's normal.
yeah,
Well, it's not normal actually. It's not something we should be doing. You should be able to stand up to your bully or stand up when you see something wrong, and help because it's human nature to want to help other people.
yeah,
There's been so many accidents, people falling or need their snow removed where I am, and people jump in and help.
yeah.
Without sometimes a lot of times they don't even ask. It's like, oh, let me give you a hand.
Yeah, and
You
we
know?
had that when we lived in New Jersey, like snow removal. We had a Boy Scout who started a business, and every year he'd come around and clear everybody's snow. He cleared our snow. He said, "I am absolutely happy to do it." We wanted to pay him for it, but he was great, and we always had a nice, clean driveway.
Yeah,
But the other side of this whole issue with the mindset is if we take it in a more positive direction, look at people like Sully Sullenberger, the pilot in the airplane on the Hudson, how he stayed focused. He had developed the mindset and stayed focused so that he could deal with that airplane. That doesn't mean that he wasn't afraid and had concerns, but he was able to do something that was definitely pretty fantastic
Yeah,
because he kept his cool.
yeah. I think he knew, and others in other situations know that if you're freaking out yourself, you're not going to fix the issue.
Mm-mm.
You're going to make it worse. And we see that in Hollywood tends to do that a lot in their movies. There's always a character who's flipping out, panicking, going crazy, and making everything worse. Well, that does happen. If you act that way, you're not going to resolve your situation, whatever you find yourself in. And I tell people that in business continuity when we're having meetings. Well, we'll figure it out when it happens. No, you don't know how
No.
you'll behave. You don't know how you'll respond when, oh, I don't know, an active shooter or something. You
Right.
have no idea when you hear that someone just got shot down in the lobby. Are you going to tell me you're going to be calm? You're going to be calm and just, okay, yeah, we can deal with it. No, you're going to get a wave of panic,
Yeah.
or other emotions coming over you, and you have to have that mindset. You can still be panicked and upset and freaked out, or however you want to describe that, but I have to stay in control. I can't let that fear take over, or I'm going to get myself in that situation as well.
Yeah.
I have to be able to manage it. Okay, what do I have to do? I got to go hide. I'm not saying you're not sweating, with
No.
nervousness like that, but you understand. Got to think beyond this. If I want to get out of this situation, I'm going to take these people that are sitting with me. We're going to go lock ourselves in the storage closet, or whatever
Right.
it may be. But have that wherewithal to be able to understand that, and be safe. But freaking out, you're only contributing to the situation, and then you end up freaking out other people and getting them panicked.
Of course you do.
If they're not, they don't have the right mindset to deal with issues, and then you've got everyone going in every direction. Nobody's helping each other, and then you're creating bigger issues for
And you
yourself.
lose more lives and you create more
Yeah,
catastrophes all the way around. I remember when I was going down the stairs at the World Trade Center, I kept telling Roselle what a good job she was doing. Good girl. And I did that for a couple of reasons. The main reason was I wanted her to know that I was okay and I'm not going to be influenced by fear, but I
yeah,
wanted her to feel comfortable. What happened though as a result of that, and it was a lesson for me, I got contacted several years later, one time specifically when I went to Kansas City to do a speech, and a woman said she wanted to come and hear me because she had come into the stairwell just after, or as we were passing her floor, which was, I think, the 54th floor. And she said, I heard you just praising your dog and being very calm. And she said, I and other people just decided we're going to follow you down the stairs. And it was a great lesson to understand that staying focused, no matter what the fear level was really otherwise, staying focused and encouraging was a much more positive thing to do. And
yeah,
today, people still don't imagine how, in a sense, calm it was going down the stairs, which doesn't mean that people weren't afraid, but several of us worked to really keep panic out of the stairwell as we were going down. My friend David did, he panicked, but then he walked a floor below me and started shouting up to me whatever he saw on the stairwell. And that was really for his benefit, he said, to have something to do other than thinking about what was going on, because he was getting pretty scared about it. But what David did by shouting up to me was he acted as a focal point for anyone on the stairs who could hear him. And they would hear him say things like, hey, Mike, I'm at the 43rd floor. All's good here. Everyone who could hear him had someone on the stairs who was focused, sounded calm, and that they could listen to know that everybody was okay, which was so
yeah.
cool.
And that probably helped them realize, okay, we're in the right direction. We're
Yeah.
going the right way. Someone is sending up positive comments. So if we've got if he's 3 floors below us, we know at least on the next 3 floors everything is okay.
Well, even if they didn't
Then
know
let's
where
go
he
to the
was
next.
Right, but even if they didn't know where he was in relation to them, the fact is that they heard somebody on the stairs saying, "I'm okay."
Yeah,
Whether he felt it, he did sound it all the way down the stairs.
yeah,
And I know that he was panicking because he did originally, but he got over that. I snapped at him. I just said, "Stop it, David. If Roselle and I can go down these stairs, so can you." And then he did. He focused. And I'm sure that he had to have helped thousands of people going down the stairs and
mhm,
helped with his words, keeping them calm.
yeah, yeah. It makes a difference.
It
And
does.
it like I said earlier, you doesn't mean you're still not afraid. Doesn't mean that you're not aware of the negative situation around you. It's and you can't change it, but you can change, like I said earlier, you can change how you respond to it. You can be in control that way.
Right.
And that's eventually what he did. And you were controlled going downstairs, with your guide dog and with all these people following you. And because of the way you were like then, they were following you.
Yeah.
And they remained calm. It's like there's someone calling up from below who's safe. I can hear that. I'm listening to Michael, tell his dog how well behaved they are, and he's going down calmly. It's like, okay, I can do this, and
I
they
can do
start
this.
calming down.
Yeah. What's the riskiest thing you've ever done?
Oh,
You
work
must
or
have taken a risk somewhere in the world other than public speaking.
oh yeah, public speaking. I still get nervous the first minute. I'm still nervous when I go up. Um, but you get used to it after a while. But that first minute,
Yeah.
I'm nervous. Oh, I have a fear of heights.
Mm.
And the two things that still surprised me that I did is I climbed the Sydney Bridge, Harbor Bridge, and oh, there's another bridge. Where is it? Is it in Brisbane? They're both in Australia. Anyway,
Mm.
I climbed them both, and I have a fear of heights. But I thought, no, I gotta do this. I can't be afraid of this my entire life. And I kept seeing all these people go up there in groups, on tours. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I was shaking, nervous like crazy. And I went, what if I fall off? And there's so many different measures in place to keep you safe. But that was risky.
Yeah.
For me, it felt risky. I was exhilarated when I did it though.
Would you
Uh,
do it again?
oh yeah, in a heartbeat now.
There
You
you
know,
go.
I'm still afraid of heights, but I would do that again because I just felt fantastic. The other, I guess, going out and being self-employed
Mm.
years ago was another risky thing. I had no idea, about incorporating myself and submitting taxes, business taxes, and government documents and all this and that, and invoicing and things like that. I had no idea about that, so that was kind of risky because I had no idea how long I'd be doing it. Well, I started in what 2007, I think.
Mm.
And so,
18
and
years.
yeah, so now it's like, well, I can't imagine myself not doing it, you know. So but I'm always willing to try something new these days. Even starting the podcast 7.5 years ago was risky.
Right.
I had no idea. Nobody was talking about my industry or resilience or business continuity or anything back then. I was the first one doing it, and I'm the longest one doing it. I've outlived a lot of people who thought they could do it. I'm still going. So that started out risky, but now I can't imagine not doing it.
Yeah.
And it's I guess it's just fun to keep trying new things. I keep growing, and I've got other plans in the works. I
Yeah.
can't give anything away, but I've got other plans to try, and they'll be risky as well. But it's like, no, let's go for it.
Have you
You
ever
know,
done skydiving or anything like that?
no, I haven't done that.
I haven't either.
Um,
I know some blind people who have, but I've never done that.
I wouldn't mind it. It's that might be one of those lines where, should I? I'm not sure about this one. But it is something that I think I wouldn't do it on my own. I think I would have to be one of those people who's connected with someone else.
With someone else. And that's usually the way blind people do it, needless to
Yeah.
say. And that's fine. I just have never done it. I haven't ever had a need to do it, but I know I can sit here and say I'm not afraid to do it.
Yeah,
That is, I could do it if it came along, if there was a need to do it, but I don't have a great need to make that happen. But
yeah,
I've had enough challenges in my life. As I tell people, I think I learned how to deal with surprises pretty early because I've been to a lot of cities, and like Boston used to have a rep of being a very accident prone city, just the way people drive. I could start to cross a street and suddenly I hear a car coming around the corner and I have to move one way or the other and draw a conclusion very quickly. Do I back up or do I go forward because the car is not doing what it's supposed to do, which is to stop?
yeah,
And I have to deal with that. So I think those kinds of experiences have helped me learn to deal with surprise a little bit too.
yeah. Well, with the skydiving, I don't think I'd go out of my way to do it, but if
That's
the
exactly it.
opportunity came along, I think I would, just for the thrill of saying, I did it.
I did it. Yeah. I went ice skating once and I sprained my ankle as we were coming off the ice after being on the ice for 3 hours. And I haven't gone ice skating again since. I'm not really afraid to, but I don't need to do it. I've done it. I understand what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's okay. Have you had any really significant aha moments in your life? Things that just suddenly something happened and went, that's what that is, or whatever.
Well, it does happen at work a lot. Dealing with clients and people provide different perspectives, and you just, oh, that's interesting. Though that happens all the time. Aha moments. Sometimes they're they're not always good aha moments.
Yeah.
Like the one I always remember the most is when I wrote my first book, Heads in the Sand. I was so proud of it and excited and sent off all these letters and marketing material to all the chambers of commerce across Canada, thinking that everyone's going to want me to speak or present or buy my book. Well, it doesn't happen that way. I got no responses, but that didn't stop me from writing 7 more books and working on 9 now.
There you go.
So, but that was kind of a negative aha moment. So, but I just learned, okay, that's not the way I should be doing that.
It put you in your place, but that's
Yeah,
fair.
I kind of I laugh at it now.
Yeah.
It's a joke, but um, you know, uh, aha things. You never know when they're going to happen. You
No,
know,
that's why they're aha.
yeah. And I guess another one would have been when I first went out on my own. I had a manager who kept pushing me, like, go work for yourself. You know this better than a lot of other people. Go do this. And I was too nervous. And then I got a phone call from a recruiting agency who was offering me a role to do where I wanted to take this company, but that I was working for full time for that
Mm.
weren't ready to go. They weren't ready yet. And it was kind of an aha moment of, do I stay where I am and maybe not be happy? Or have I just been given an opportunity to go forward? So when I looked at it that way, it did become an aha moment, like, here's my path forward.
Yeah.
So, and that was way back in 2007 or so, somewhere around there. So the aha moments can be good, they can be bad, and but as
But
long as you learn from them, no matter
that's
what.
exactly right. That's the neat thing about aha moments. You don't expect them, but they're some of the best learning opportunities that you'll ever get.
Yeah, yeah, I agree completely because you never know.
No.
That's the nice thing, and I think that's also part of what I do when I'm working with so many different people of different levels. Is they all have different experiences. They all have different backgrounds. They can all be CEOs, but they all come from a different direction
Yeah.
and different backgrounds. So they're all going to be offering something new that's going to make you sit there and go, "Oh yeah, I hadn't
Yeah.
thought of that before."
Yeah.
You
That's what
know? So
that's so cool.
yeah, but you have to, be able to listen and pick up on those kind of things.
But you've been very successful. What are some of the secrets of success that you've discovered or that you put to use?
For me, I'll put it bluntly: shut up and listen.
There you are.
You know
But
that.
it's so true. It's true.
Yeah, I think I've learned more by just using my two ears rather than my one mouth. And instead of
Computer. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh sorry, instead of telling people everything they should be doing, and this is what I think you should do, and like talking at people, it's so much better just talk with people, and
Hmm.
then they'll, even if you're trying to really 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 get them to see your side, they will come around to your side easier and probably better if you let them realize it themselves. So you just listen and you ask the odd probing question, and eventually comes around and goes, "Oh, yeah, I get it. What you mean now by doing this?" And going, "Yeah, that's where I was going. I guess I just wasn't saying it right." And being humble enough to, even though I know I did say it right, maybe I just wasn't saying it right to that person
To that person.
the
Yeah.
right way. So listening to them, and I think is one of the big keys to success. For me, it has, and I've learned twice as much that way. And maybe that's why I enjoy interviewing people on the podcast, is because I ask a couple of questions and then just let people talk.
Which is what makes it fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's sometimes it's fun to just sit there and not say anything, just let
Yeah.
someone else do all the talking.
Yeah. What, your industry is, I would assume, evolved and changed over the years. What are some of the major changes, or some of the ways that the industry has evolved? You've been in it a long time, and certainly business continuity, disaster recovery, whatever you want to call it, has in some senses become a little bit more of a visible thing. Although I think people, as we both said earlier, ignore it a lot. But how's the
Yeah.
industry changed over time?
Well, when I started, it was before Y2K,
Yes.
96. And back then, when I first started, everything was IT focused. If your mainframe went down, your computer broke, that's the direction everyone came from. And then you added business continuity on top of that. Okay, now what do we do with our business operations? Are there things we can do manually while they fix the computer or rebuild the mainframe? And then it went to, okay, well, let's bring in, our help desk, who people call, I've got a problem with a computer and here's our priority and severity. Okay, so we'll respond to your query in 12 hours because it's only one person. But if there's 10 people who have the issue, now it becomes 6 hours, and bringing in those different aspects. So we went from IT disaster recovery to business continuity to then bringing in other disciplines and linking to them, like emergency management, crisis management, business continuity, incident management, cyber information security. Now we've got business continuity management, bringing all these different teams together. And now, or at least on some level, not really integrating very well with each other, but just having an awareness of each other. Then we've moved to operational resilience. And again, that buzzword, where all these teams do have to work together and understand what each other is delivering and the value of each of them. And so it just keeps growing in that direction, where it started off with rebuild a mainframe to getting everybody working together to keep your operations going, to keep your partners happy, to keep your customers happy, ensuring life safety is priority number one. When I started, life safety wasn't really thrown into the business continuity realm that much. It was always the focus on the business. So the size and scope has gotten a lot bigger and more encompassing of other areas. And I wouldn't necessarily all call that business continuity, but it is. I see business continuity as the hub and a wheel rather than a spoke to bring
Right.
all the different teams together to help them understand. Hey, here's how you incident management, help desk, service desk. Here's how you help the disaster recovery team. Here's how you can help the cyber team, cyber. Here's how you can actually help this team, and being able to understand. And that's where the biggest change of things is going, is now more and more people are understanding how they really need to work together rather than a silo, which
Right.
a lot of organizations still do, but it's those walls are starting to come down because they can understand no one can do it alone. You have to work together with your internal departments, leadership, uh, data analysts, who have to be able to figure out how to rebuild data, or your third parties. We need to talk with them. We have to have a relationship with them, our supply chain, and understand where they're going and what they have in place if we or they experience something. So it's definitely grown in size and scope.
Well, and we're seeing enough challenges that I think some people are catching on to the fact that they have to learn to work together and they have to think in a broader base than they have in the past. And that's
Yeah.
probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you had the opportunity, what would you tell the younger Alex?
Run for the hills.
Yeah,
No,
really.
no, seriously. I kind of mentioned a couple of them already. Don't sweat the small things. You know, sometimes, yeah, and I think that comes down to our mindset thing as well. Understand your priorities and what's important. And if it's not a priority or important, don't sweat it. Don't be afraid to take risks. If you do your planning, whether it be jumping out of a plane or whatever, the first thing you want to do is what safety measures are in place to ensure that my jump will be successful. Those kind of things. So once you understand that, then you can make knowledgeable decisions. Don't be afraid to take those risks. And it's one of the big things. It's okay to fail. Like I said about the book thing, all that marketing material I sent out. It's okay to fail. Learn from it and move on.
Yeah.
I can laugh at those kind of things now. For years I couldn't. I was really like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? It's like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I, it just wasn't the right time. Didn't do it the right way. Okay, fine, move on. You know, don't be afraid to fail. If you fail and get up, well, then is it really a failure? You learned. You got back up and you kept going, and that's the part of resilience too, right?
Yeah.
If you trip and fall, you get up and keep going. But if you trip and fall and stay down, well, then maybe you are failing.
That's the failure. I mean, the reality is that it isn't failure if you learn from it and move on. It was something that set you back, but that's
Yeah,
okay. That's all
yeah.
right.
My favorite band, Marillion, has a line in one of their songs, "Rich." Failure isn't about falling down. Failure is staying down.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Completely agree with it. Stand by it. When I heard that, I went, yes.
Yeah.
One of those aha moments.
There you go. That again. Well,
Yeah.
Alex, this has absolutely been a lot of fun. I'm really glad that we got a chance to do it. We'll have to do some more of it, but I really enjoy you being here. And I want to say to everybody listening and watching, I hope you've enjoyed this and learned a lot from it. I have, and I always enjoy learning from everybody who comes on the podcast, but I especially really have enjoyed and really love a lot of the thoughts that Alex has sent to us. So I hope that you've enjoyed it. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to email me at Michael, Michaelhi, at accessibe, accessibe.com, and let me know your thoughts. Wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star review. We really value your reviews and the things that you have to say. So please give us a great review. We love it. And if you can think of anybody who ought to be a guest, Alex, you as well, please pass along names, introduce me to people. We're always looking for more people to be on our podcast because they'll show us that we're all more unstoppable than we think we are. But I really think that it's important to do that. So it's a lot of fun to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So again, Alex, I really want to thank you and really appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for the invite. It's been a pleasure.